On May 29, 2024, Lee Chan-ju, a former famous Korean gamer, was arrested in Vietnam after murdering his girlfriend, Park Hyuna, in hotel room 6112. But this was not just an ordinary murder case. Before committing the crime, Lee exhibited a series of abnormal behaviors: not wearing clothes, disheveled hair, vacant eyes, and even climbing to the rooftop of a 65-story building, showing signs of losing control. Notably, the crime occurred on the same day that Lee and Hyuna had set their wedding date after many years of being together. The incident quickly attracted major attention in Korea, where they were admired as the golden couple in the esports world. So, what made a man who was once at the peak of fame become the murderer of the one he loved? Let's explore each detail of this intriguing case. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to not miss out on the next shocking crime stories. Around 1 p.m. on May 30, 2024, at the Lotte Hotel, one of the tallest buildings in Hanoi, security staff discovered a young man, not wearing clothes, climbing up to the rooftop of the 65-story building, showing severe signs of instability. The incident led the security team to immediately issue an urgent alarm and deploy a plan to contain the man as he had approached the edge of the roof. While being brought down, he continuously screamed and struggled, showing signs of intense agitation and complete loss of control. The man could not answer any questions clearly. His face was blank, his eyes vacant, with signs of aggression and clear hallucinations. The hotel management immediately contacted the Badin District Police. Within minutes, the authorities arrived and began identifying the man who had been subdued. The result was surprising. It was Lee Chan-ju, a Korean national, currently staying in room 60112 of the hotel. When the police and Lee Chan-ju returned to the room, a horrific scene unfolded behind the door. On the bed was the body of a young woman, lying motionless, with a purple face. Her body showed signs of severe abuse. The victim was identified as Park Hyuna, 33 years old, Lee Chan-ju's girlfriend. She had just entered Vietnam earlier that morning. Immediately, Lee Chan-ju was escorted to the police station, where he was promptly interrogated. In a state of panic, Lee quickly confessed to murdering his girlfriend, and the reason he initially gave stunned even the investigators. "She rejected me. I lost control. I don't even understand why I acted like that." The autopsy results determined the cause of death was acute respiratory failure, with signs indicating that her face had been compressed before her death. The victim's body showed multiple signs of trauma to the head, face, and lower body. Notably, there was a long mark around her neck, indicating that the victim had fought back fiercely before being murdered. Another detail that caught the investigators' attention was an unusual bruise on the victim's lower body, raising suspicions that Lee Chan-ju may have assaulted her before murdering her. Hanoi police made a preliminary conclusion. This was an exceptionally serious case, showing signs of uncontrolled violence, and it was likely related to a psychological outburst, with suspicions of an abnormal motive. In his initial statement, Lee Chan-ju claimed the conflict arose from being rejected by his girlfriend. However, only a few hours later, Lee Chan-ju changed his statement. He stated that he lost control when he discovered Park Hyuna had complicated romantic relationships with multiple men, something that made him feel seriously betrayed and unable to control his emotions. However, the investigation found no concrete evidence to support the second statement. On the contrary, all signs at the scene pointed to a sudden act of violence. The suspicions only became clear when the investigation expanded, focusing on Lee Chan-ju's personal records. Lee Chan-ju used to be a name that made the esports community in Asia go wild. Born in 2000 in Seoul, South Korea, Lee quickly showed his strong passion for the game, League of Legends. At just 13 years old, Lee Chan-ju quietly nurtured his dream of becoming a professional gamer. He chose the nickname Harrowing, inspired by a character in the Japanese light novel Outrage. The name sounded somewhat naive, but quickly became associated with performances that amazed the League of Legends community, even though he was still just a high school student. In 2016, at the age of 16, Lee Chan-ju ranked among the top players on the Korean server, one of the most competitive environments in the world. That same year, He decided to drop out of school to pursue his esports dream, joining the semi-professional team KGSO and officially stepping into the professional gaming scene. Just a year later, Lee debuted at the prestigious LCK tournament under the Jin Air Green Wings banner, playing in the mid-lane position. With bold playstyle, outstanding skills, and rare confidence, Lee quickly became a phenomenon. Experts did not hesitate to call him the second faker, and the media affectionately dubbed him the golden boy of LCK. However, that glory quickly faded. Despite his talent, Lee was continuously pushed to the bench due to strict internal regulations and conflicts within the main roster. When the Jin Air Green Wings disbanded at the end of 2020, his career began to plummet. In 2021, Lee was invited by a major team, but throughout the season he never played a single match. At the end of the season, he quietly left in heavy disappointment. Not accepting the end of his career in silence, Lee Chanju chose to move to Japan, a market with less competition but still strong enough for him to start over from scratch. In 2022, he joined Detonation Focus Me at the LJL tournament and quickly regained his form. He ranked among the top 6 mid-lane players of the season, frequently appearing in the media, and was seen as the man who came back from the dead. However, that light also only flickered for a moment. At the 2022 World Championship, Detonation Focus Me was eliminated in the opening round. Lee played poorly, lacking motivation, and was heavily criticized by the public. No team contacted him after the season. At 22, Lee Chanju announced his retirement. In 2023, during a gathering with friends, Lee Chanju unexpectedly met Park Hyuna, a woman 9 years older than him, working in commerce. She had studied abroad in Australia, had an attractive appearance, a kind personality, and was particularly filial to her parents. From their first meeting, Lee pursued Park passionately and enthusiastically. Her friends were surprised by his persistence and gradually realized his true identity. Harrowing, the former esports star who had shaken the Asian gaming community. Although they had never officially announced it, through their intimate interactions, everyone implicitly understood that Lee Chanju and Park Hyuna had become a couple by the end of 2023. By April 2024, Park first confided in her parents that she was dating a younger guy. She believed he was a good person, just going through a psychological crisis, and she wanted to be there to help him get through it. However, as their relationship deepened, Park began to notice unsettling signs in her boyfriend. According to close friends, Lee would often lose his temper without reason, showing excessive controlling tendencies and even extreme reactions to trivial situations in daily life. There were times when Park wanted to end the relationship, but each time, Lee would cry, beg, and show such weakness and despair that she couldn't bring herself to turn away. What she didn't know was that in 2023, Lee Chanju was diagnosed with bipolar disorder type E, a particularly dangerous form of this condition. People with this type of disorder can fall into extreme manic states, delusions, behavioral control disorders, and may tend to harm themselves or those close to them. After being diagnosed, the doctor required Lee to undergo long-term outpatient treatment, monthly injections, and daily mood stabilizers. However, Lee reacted violently and firmly refused. During his first follow-up, according to his father, Lee screamed, "I don't have a disease. I'm not crazy." During the first injection, he had to be restrained to prevent harm to the medical staff. For many, this would have been the first step to recovery. But for Lee, it was the first psychological shock that began to break his relationship with his family. On the evening of April 16, 2023, a nail salon in Gangnam District, Seoul, received a booking call from a strange man. His voice was somewhat unusual, and his disconnected way of speaking made the salon owner feel uneasy. However, as there were no clear signs of danger, she agreed to the appointment. At 7 p.m., Lee Chanju appeared. During the 40 minutes of his manicure, he sat silently, his eyes vacant, mumbling as if talking to an invisible person. Suddenly, Lee climbed onto the massage bed and began undressing, lying down as if in a private space. The two women in the salon were stunned, speechless. The owner tried to stay calm, asking Lee to put his clothes back on and leave the salon. But he remained motionless, his face immersed in an unusually blank state, showing no reaction. Terrified, she immediately called the police. Lee was escorted off the premises shortly afterward. The incident quickly spread on social media and the press. Although his real name was not released, with the description "former famous esports player," netizens quickly uncovered the true identity of the man involved. It was Harrowing, Lee Chan-ju. The test results showed that Lee had not used any stimulants at the time of the incident. However, what shocked many was his behavior afterward. When his friends pressed him, Lee answered hesitantly in a dazed state, his eyes vacant and his voice trembling. "I don't know why. It's like something is controlling me. I couldn't stop." A few days later, Lee called the same nail salon again, even though he had been firmly rejected before. In later live streams, viewers continuously noticed abnormal behaviors: vacant stares, movements as if dancing in water, fragmented speech, and disorganized thinking. His face was gaunt, and he had lost significant weight. All these signs should have been a red flag, but instead of facing it, Lee's family chose silence. They avoided mentioning his medication, afraid it would make him go crazy. Lee's father later admitted through tears, "We argued a lot about the treatment. He stopped his medication, I couldn't force him." And then, at 3 a.m. on May 29th, Lee Chan-ju, wearing a t-shirt and shorts, carrying his passport and a small amount of cash, suddenly left the house, taking a taxi to Incheon Airport. When the driver curiously asked where he was going at midnight, Lee just laughed and said, "I have to save the Earth from the earthquake." When his father called to ask where he was, Lee Chan-ju continued to respond with delusional statements. "I have to adjust the Earth's rotation axis. If I don't do it now, the earthquake will never stop." But just a few hours later, when a close friend texted to ask the real reason for his trip, Lee replied with a short, cold message. "I need to go to Vietnam to relieve personal needs." Amidst his world-saving delusions and a distorted primal urge, Lee's mind was a chaotic mess beyond control. He booked a ticket, boarded a plane, and landed in Hanoi like a psychological bomb waiting to be activated. On the evening of May 29th, Lee Chan-ju arrived at a hotel in Ba Dinh district. Instead of checking in normally, he used a strange mix of Korean, English, and nonsensical ramblings. When the receptionist seemed confused, Lee suddenly became angry, slammed his phone on the counter, screamed, and ran out of the hotel. Soon after, people near Ngoc Khan Lake spotted a man standing motionless by the water, staring at the lake's surface as if hypnotized. A woman living nearby, terrified by his strange behavior, immediately called the local police. About 15 minutes later, the authorities arrived. This was the second time within 24 hours that Lee Chan-ju had been escorted to the police station in a severely disturbed mental state. On the morning of May 30th, Park Hyuna unexpectedly received a message from Lee's father with a cold yet pressured request. "You have to go there and bring him back. I'm busy, I can't go. Don't mention the medication. If needed, mix the medicine in Coca-Cola and make him drink it." He made up an excuse, saying he was handling important documents and couldn't fly to Vietnam. But in reality, he was afraid to face his son, who was falling into a severe delusional state. Instead of taking responsibility, he transferred money for Park to book the flight and hotel herself, leaving her to handle bringing Lee back alone. Because she cared for her boyfriend, Park Hyuna didn't tell her family the truth. She just said that she had a sudden business trip, then quietly set off the next morning. At 12 p.m. on May 30th, 2024, Park Hyuna arrived at the Hanoi police station to bail Lee Chan-ju out. She planned to take him to the airport that day to return to South Korea. However, Lee suddenly begged, "Let me stay for one night? We'll go back tomorrow." Thinking her boyfriend was exhausted, Park agreed. The two quickly moved to the Lotte Hotel, which would later become the crime scene of a shocking murder. Around 12:54 p.m., the security camera recorded the two of them entering the elevator together. Lee was barefoot, holding his shoes in his hand, while Park tightly held his hand. At 1:09 p.m., they entered rooms 60 and 12. About 10 minutes later, Lee Chan-ju suddenly ran out of the room, naked, panicked, running toward the stairs leading to the rooftop. When the police barged in to check the room, Park Hyuna was dead. Lee was subdued and arrested on the spot. After being calmed with sedatives, Lee confessed to killing his girlfriend. Based on the traces at the scene and his initial statement, the investigation offered two main hypotheses. The first hypothesis: Park secretly put drugs into a Coca-Cola can, as instructed by Lee's father. When Lee found out, he reacted violently, feeling betrayed. The pent-up anger exploded into extreme violent behavior. The second hypothesis: Lee was provoked by unfulfilled primal needs. When he tried to force Park and she refused, he fell into a frenzy and committed the crime. Regardless of which hypothesis is true, one thing is undeniable: Lee Chanju completely lost control. In the moment of the crime, he was unable to distinguish right from wrong, his reasoning clouded by intense agitation. If Lee Chanju is determined to have completely lost his ability to act at that moment, he could be exempted from criminal liability and only subjected to mandatory treatment. However, as of now, the possibility of Lee Chanju being extradited back to South Korea is virtually zero. The crime took place on Vietnamese territory, causing particularly severe consequences, with the victim being a foreign citizen. According to international legal principles and Vietnamese law, the case must be prosecuted fairly according to the current regulations. This is not just a murder case. The case serves as a warning about the importance of healthy communication, emotional control, and clear boundaries between affection and violence, especially in relationships that seem close and safe. The video ends here. If you find the story fascinating, please like, subscribe, and share to support us. Thank you, and see you in the next video.
In 2004, in Korea, a 14-year-old female student was gang-raped by 44 male high school students for a year. Not stopping there, these predators forced her to deceive her younger sister and cousin to satisfy their desires. When the incident was uncovered, it seemed that they would face severe punishment. However, the school, a place that should have been safe, turned its back on her, pushing her further into darkness. Law enforcement agencies compounded the harm by blaming the victim. 2 decades later, a case thought to be buried was suddenly brought to light by a mysterious YouTuber, exposing horrifying truths that enraged society. You are watching a true story. Let's uncover dark secrets and thrilling details you've never heard before. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel to explore today's story. Miryang, where the incident occurred, is a small city in Gyeongsangnam Province, South Korea. The city develops slowly, blending tradition with modernity. Small winding roads lead to schools shaded by green trees. However, behind its peaceful appearance, a darkness silently creeps in, concealing cruel acts that no one could have imagined. The victim in this story, Choi, a 14-year-old girl, grew up in a poor family. Her father was an alcoholic and unemployed, while her mother was the breadwinner of the household. Because of this, arguments at home happened frequently. Her father even brutally beat her mother and siblings. By January 2003, unable to endure it any longer, Choi's mother decided to divorce and leave their home in Ulsan, abandoning Choi and her 2 younger siblings under the control of their abusive father. Without her mother, every time her father came home drunk, Choi became his main target. The insults and continuous violence turned her life into a nightmare. Unable to confide in anyone, Choi sought solace through online conversations. That's when she met Kim, an 18-year-old male student from Miryang, about an hour from Ulsan. They met by chance when Choi accidentally dialed the wrong number while calling a friend, and Kim answered. From there, they occasionally chatted. Kim appeared very friendly and cleverly persuaded Choi to visit Miryang. Unaware of Kim's true identity, Choi agreed without much concern. In reality, Kim was a member of the Miryang Alliance, a notorious group known for bullying and extorting money from classmates. Choi had no idea of the danger awaiting her. When Choi arrived in Miryang, Kim introduced her to Park, the group's leader. From the first meeting, the atmosphere turned tense as Park demanded money from Choi. When Choi said she didn't have any money, Park, without hesitation, used a metal pipe to beat her unconscious. At the time, many group members witnessed the scene but didn't intervene as they were too accustomed to such acts. When Choi regained consciousness, she found herself in a hotel room surrounded by Park and 12 other group members. Terrified and panicked, Choi tried to run to the door but was stopped. Park ordered the group to lock the door, blocking all exits. The group then attacked her, tearing off her clothes and taking turns sexually assaulting her. Not stopping there, they used other objects in the room to intensify the torture, causing severe injuries to Choi. These barbaric acts not only left physical scars but also caused significant long-term health issues for Choi, particularly severe gynecological problems. Park ordered the entire incident to be recorded on mobile phones and cameras, ensuring there was enough evidence to blackmail Choi into silence. "If you dare to speak up, this video will be spread everywhere," Park said with a sinister smile, delivering a threat that left Choi frozen in fear. Choi felt so ashamed and humiliated that she couldn't tell anyone, not even her family. The fear of having her reputation destroyed forced her into silence. When one girl was no longer enough to satisfy them, these monsters began to have even more depraved thoughts. Park demanded that Choi bring her 13-year-old younger sister and 16-year-old cousin to Miryang. If she refused, the video would be released online. In fear and desperation, Choi was forced to comply. She led her two closest loved ones to a place she knew was full of danger. In Miryang, all three girls became victims. The group continued their assaults and also stole all their money and jewelry. Choi, despite her pain and despair, didn't dare to reveal the truth to anyone. She feared that speaking out would ruin not only her life but her family's as well. Her younger sister and cousin felt the same. Overwhelmed by fear, they endured the suffering in silence. A year passed, but Choi's pain didn't fade. She became withdrawn, frequently startled, and displayed unusual psychological symptoms that worried her family. Choi's aunt, who had been observing her, realized something was wrong. She decided to approach her niece to uncover the truth. "Is there something you're hiding from me? Please tell me, and I will help you," her aunt gently comforted and encouraged Choi to open up. At this moment, Choi broke down and recounted the horrifying ordeal she and her loved ones had endured. The aunt was shocked by the revelation. She immediately called Choi's mother. Choi's mother returned quickly, unable to believe that her daughter had endured such unbearable pain for an entire year without anyone knowing. After hearing the entire story, Choi's mother decided to bring the case to light. Despite her fears, she couldn't let this crime remain buried. On November 25, 2004, Choi's mother, with all her courage, called the police to report the incident. She demanded strict protection of her daughter's identity. The police also promised a confidential investigation and the protection of the victim's identity. However, this promise was quickly broken. On December 6, 2004, based on the information Choi provided, the police conducted a major public operation announcing that 44 suspects had been brought to the Namdong police station in Ulsan. Among the 44 arrested, 35 were high school students from Miryang. What should have been a confidential investigation now became the center of public attention. During the investigation, a report containing the victim's name, age, and address was leaked. This caused Choi and her family to fall into panic. The police had promised to assign a female officer to interview the victim to minimize psychological trauma. Instead, Choi was confronted by a male officer. During the first interview, the officer was not only unprofessional, but also insulted Choi with cruel questions. "Didn't you enjoy it? Or did you willingly go to them? You've ruined the reputation of my hometown, Miryang. What do you plan to do about my life and the people here?" These remarks left Choi feeling more humiliated and terrified than ever. Furthermore, the police required Choi to face each of the 44 suspects directly. Each time, she had to recount the details of what had happened. In total, Choi was summoned over 30 times for the investigation. Each interrogation lasted 7 to 8 hours, exhausting her both physically and mentally. The injustice and inhumane treatment by the police enraged women's and civil rights organizations in South Korea, leading to protests and demands for immediate action. Public scrutiny intensified, focusing on how the police failed to protect the victim and instead subjected her to further severe psychological trauma. Public outrage peaked, forcing the police to disband the initial investigative team of 4 officers directly handling the case and 4 others involved during the process. A new investigative team with female officers was formed to minimize the victim's psychological trauma and restore public trust. Under growing public pressure, The prosecution established a special investigation unit to ensure transparency and objectivity in the case. A reporter from NBC, who was the first to cover the case, revealed that shortly after the incident, a promotion review for the officers involved had taken place, fueling further public anger. 8 officers disciplined earlier for investigative misconduct were reinstated within a year, exacerbating societal frustration. During this time, Choi and her family received threats from the suspects and their parents. "If you ruin our son's life, you won't live in peace," one parent directly told Choi's mother, intensifying her fears for her family's safety. At Choi's school, the case became a hot topic of gossip. However, instead of protection, Choi was scolded by some teachers, who accused her of bringing disgrace to the school. Some teachers even implied that Choi was to blame for the incident, further damaging her self-esteem. The identities of Choi and her younger sister were leaked, forcing the family to move elsewhere. In January 2005, Choi, her sister, and their mother relocated to Seoul to start anew. In Seoul, Choi and her sister were admitted to John Severance Hospital for treatment. Doctors revealed that Choi's condition was severe. She suffered from both physical and psychological trauma, with dangerous complications resulting from prolonged abuse and neglect. During therapy sessions, Choi often cried. Alone with her therapist, she shared feelings of abandonment by her mother and the torment she endured from her abusers, seeking empathy. After a month of treatment, Choi was discharged, but her depression and extreme thoughts persisted. She attempted suicide several times by jumping in front of subway trains, but was rescued in time. Concerned by Choi's dangerous behavior, her family decided to readmit her to the hospital for continued psychiatric care. During this time, Choi's father and relatives of the suspects visited her, proposing reconciliation. It was revealed that Choi's father, an alcoholic, had agreed to a settlement, accepting 50 million won in compensation from the suspects' families. However, the compensation money was not used to support Choi and her sister. Instead, most of it was spent by her father on building a private home and distributing it to relatives. The settlement also resulted in significant sentence reductions for the perpetrators. Out of 44 suspects, only 10 were prosecuted, 20 were sent to juvenile detention, and 13 were released. After the settlement, Choi's father transferred custody of her and her sister back to their mother. The two sisters lived with their mother in a small rented room in Seoul, relying on social assistance. Meanwhile, Choi's younger brother continued to live with their father in Ulsan. Not long after, Choi's father passed away due to alcohol abuse, while Choi and her mother continued their fight for justice. They filed a lawsuit against the police, demanding compensation for severe investigative misconduct. On March 18, 2007, after persistent efforts by Choi's family, the Seoul High Court ordered the government to compensate the victim and her family. According to the ruling, Choi and her sister received 30 million won, while their mother was awarded 10 million won. On June 16, 2008, the South Korean Supreme Court upheld the ruling, concluding the financial compensation aspect of the prolonged case. By April 2005, Choi and her mother began searching for a new high school for her to continue her education, but every school refused to accept her. After legal intervention, a public high school in Seoul finally agreed to admit Choi, but challenges arose almost immediately. One day, the mother of one of the perpetrators came to Choi's new school, requesting the school and parents to sign a petition for her son's sentence to be reduced. Unable to endure the harassment, Choi was forced to drop out, once again giving up hope for a normal future. Choi's lawyer shared that after leaving school, she fell into a deep depression. She spent most of her time on the computer and worked short-term part-time jobs. Choi also struggled with weight gain due to stress-induced overeating, leading to frequent job changes and a constant sense of instability. Meanwhile, among the perpetrators, only 10 out of 44 were prosecuted and sent to juvenile detention, while 34 escaped criminal charges thanks to the settlement. Of the 34 not prosecuted, 20 were sent to juvenile correctional facilities but had no criminal records. Another member of the group was transferred to a different police jurisdiction due to involvement in an unrelated case, but faced no responsibility for Choi's case. In April 2005, the Ulsan People's Court ruled that all 10 prosecuted individuals be sent to juvenile detention, officially concluding the legal penalties. Prosecutors argued that the assaults and threats were not severe enough to qualify as coercion, and that there was insufficient evidence to pursue criminal charges against the perpetrators. This outcome closed the case in frustration for Choi's family and the public, as the cruel offenders left no legal records behind. The case ended with the conclusion that justice had been served, but societal anger over the injustice in the legal system remained unresolved. 20 years after the case, on June 1, 2024, a mysterious YouTuber shocked the public by uploading a video revealing the identities of some perpetrators and suspects in the Miryang case. The videos garnered millions of views, with the YouTuber accusing Kim, the mastermind, of escaping punishment while leading a fulfilled life with a successful career and a happy family. Kim and his accomplices remained in contact and even met regularly as though nothing had happened. After their identities were exposed, Kim and several other suspects were fired from their jobs and faced harsh criticism from the online community. The public could not forgive the perpetrators, condemning them for living comfortably while the victim suffered without receiving the justice she deserved. The YouTuber's videos sparked a heated debate over personal punishment measures, with increasing numbers of internet users joining in to expose the identities of the perpetrators. By June 11, 2024, police received 3 complaints and 13 defamation petitions, not only from the suspects, but also from individuals mistakenly identified. While some YouTubers claimed Choi's family approved the exposure of the perpetrators' identities, the Korean Sexual Violence Relief Center opposed these actions. The center stated, "The unauthorized disclosure of the perpetrators' identities causes further harm to the victim. This does not bring justice, but only creates additional conflict." On June 21, 2024, one of the suspects sent a handwritten letter to the mysterious YouTuber, writing, "20 years ago, out of ignorance and foolishness, I committed an unforgivable crime." This apology immediately triggered another wave of debate, with many criticizing that such belated remorse could never compensate for the victim's suffering. The case continued to be a hot topic on social media, with many calling for the case to be reopened and the responsibilities of each individual to be clarified in court. This concludes the video. Thank you for following this compelling story. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to catch more fascinating stories.
On May 21, 2021, South Korean Air Force Sergeant Lee Yaram unexpectedly committed suicide in her military dormitory. But this was no ordinary suicide. Just before leaving this world, Lee Yaram left behind a video exposing everything she had endured during her service. Even more tragic was the fact that the day she chose to end everything was also the day of her wedding to her longtime boyfriend. When this information was made public, it caused a massive outcry in South Korea, leading to nearly 400,000 people signing a petition demanding a thorough investigation. What exactly was in that video? And who would be held accountable for her story? Join us as we delve into every detail of this shocking case. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss any more mysterious cases. Our main character, Lee Yaram, a proud female sergeant of the South Korean Air Force. On May 21, 2021, Lee Yaram and her fiancé officially registered their marriage. That evening, they celebrated with a dinner at an upscale restaurant. After dinner, her husband had to work a night shift. Lee Yaram drove him to his workplace. She was still smiling, still acting as normal as any other day. Past 11 p.m., Lee Yaram opened the fridge and took out the meal she had prepared for her husband the next morning. She placed the meal on the table and adjusted the lid. Then, she picked up her phone and sent her husband a familiar message. "Good night, see you tomorrow." But this time, there was no "see you tomorrow." Right after sending the message, she set her phone down, turned on the camera, and recorded the final moments of her life. "I tried to fight. I followed the procedures, but no one stood by my side. I was betrayed, forced into silence. I can't bear it anymore. The next morning, at 6:30 a.m., her husband finished his shift and returned home. However, the moment he opened the door, a horrifying scene unfolded before his eyes. Lee Yaram was lying motionless on the floor. She had taken her own life. Her body was ice cold. Her husband immediately called her family. He still couldn't believe the reality before him. The room was still neat, with no signs of struggle or disorder. It was as if Lee Yaram had planned everything in advance. But the most haunting thing wasn't Lee Yaram's body. It was the phone lying next to her. The screen was still lit, displaying an unwatched video. From here, the veil of secrecy, or rather the reason behind this tragedy, began to unravel. Lee Yaram had been sexually assaulted by her own comrades, and when she reported it, no one helped her. The perpetrators were not only unpunished, but had also conspired to defame her, making her feel like a troublemaker, someone who deserved to be scorned. She felt that her body had been tainted and that she was no longer worthy of her fiancé. Death was the only way she could atone for what she believed was her fault. In the video, Lee Yaram didn't just expose those who destroyed her life. She also spoke about herself, about the things that made her strong, but also made her a target for merciless suppression. Lee Yaram was not an ordinary girl. From a young age, she possessed a natural beauty and aura that rivaled any celebrity. Talent scouts even approached her multiple times, inviting her to enter the entertainment industry. Her friends never understood why she refused. She could have become a famous star, a top actress, achieving fame and wealth effortlessly. But she rejected it. To Lee Yaram, fame meant nothing. She had another dream. She wanted to be a soldier. And, with perseverance and extraordinary effort, she achieved her dream, becoming a female officer in the South Korean Air Force. In 2017, Lee Yaram officially joined the 20th Fighter Wing of the South Korean Air Force, one of the most prestigious and elite units in the country. Established in December 1996, the 20th Fighter Wing was not only a key unit in the Air Force, but also frequently participated in joint military exercises with the U.S., showcasing its strategic importance. Being selected into such an elite unit was a great honor for any soldier. For Lee Yaram, this wasn't just an achievement, it was a significant step toward fulfilling her dream of becoming an exceptional military officer. She thought she was getting closer to her life's purpose. But she didn't realize that her nightmare was just beginning. Because she was a woman, in an environment dominated by male soldiers, she quickly became the center of attention. Her striking beauty, openness, and strong-willed personality, all of these made Lee Yaram both admired and the target of inappropriate gazes. At first, it was just harmless flirting. But when she politely declined, those gazes changed. They were no longer friendly. Lee Yaram did not want to be the subject of gossip, nor did she want to be entangled in false rumors. She chose to keep her distance. She spoke less, smiled less, and even brought her boyfriend to the base, hoping this would make the pursuers stop. And it worked. Most of those who had previously flirted with her automatically backed off. They kept their distance and stopped pursuing her. But not everyone was like that. Sergeant Jang, an older male colleague who had enlisted before her, one of the few who refused to accept rejection. Jang took advantage of the senior-junior relationship to get close to her. At first, it was just seemingly harmless jokes, small talk she didn't want to hear. But soon, it didn't stop at words. He began to invade her personal space. Accidental touches on her shoulder, lingering stares when she changed in the training room. Lee Yaram felt suffocated. She tried to keep her distance, but Jang wouldn't stop. He found every excuse to approach her. At a company, Jang drank a lot. Even though many people were around, he openly made inappropriate advances toward Lee Yaram. Unfortunately, no one stepped in to stop him. Lee Yaram was forced to push back. "Don't ever touch me again," Yeram shouted. All eyes turned toward her, but no one said anything. No one stood up for her. This act humiliated Jang. He felt his pride was shattered, and from that moment he held a grudge against her. From that day on, Yeram tried harder than ever to avoid Jang. She knew he was not the type to forgive easily. A few days later, her superior, Warrant Officer No, unexpectedly approached her. He was someone she rarely interacted with, which made her cautious. "I want you to accompany me to a party," he said, leaving no room for negotiation. "There will be many high-ranking officers. You should take this opportunity." Lee Yeram immediately refused. She didn't want to be involved with people like them. She didn't need this kind of opportunity. Sheet 1. But No's reaction changed instantly. He was no longer friendly. His tone became threatening. "Do you think you have the right to refuse?" His voice turned cold. "I am your superior. Do you know what will happen if you defy me? Your future in the military could end immediately." There was no hidden meaning in his words. It was a direct threat, a disguised order. She understood she had no other choice. Yeram reluctantly agreed. But deep inside, she felt uneasy. Something was not right. Throughout the party, Lee Yeram refused to drink a single drop of alcohol. She didn't want to let her guard down, especially in the presence of those she did not trust. Suddenly, Warrant Officer No announced that he had to leave early. A perfect chance for Yeram to leave as well, without drawing attention. She stood up, ready to leave. But at that moment, Sergeant Jang, drunk, stood in her way. His eyes were bloodshot, his breath reeking of alcohol. "I drank too much and can't drive home. Can you take me back?" His voice was slurred. Yeram hesitated. She didn't want anything to do with him, but she also didn't want to make a scene. He was clearly drunk. If he drove himself, an accident could happen. Wanting to leave the party as soon as possible and avoid drawing attention, Yeram reluctantly agreed. But she had no idea this would be the decision that led to her tragedy. While driving Jam home, when they reached a deserted road, he suddenly seized control and forced her to stop the car. Before she could react, he forced himself on her, ignoring her protests. Lee Yeram fought back with all the strength she had, but she couldn't escape her cruel fate. She returned to the base in turmoil. It felt like a nightmare, but it was real. She had been violated by her own comrade. But she couldn't stay silent. She couldn't let him get away with it. She decided he had to pay. The next morning, she went straight to her direct superior, Warrant Officer No. She reported everything, demanding justice. She believed he would help her. No pretended to listen. He feigned sympathy. "I understand, Lee Yeram. I will report this to the higher-ups. Don't worry, Jan will be severely punished." Yeram felt comforted. She believed her superior's promise, convinced that justice would be served. But it was all a trap. As soon as she left the office, No immediately called Jan to inform him. He couldn't let this incident come to light. If his superiors found out, he would be implicated as well. That evening, Sergeant John unexpectedly appeared in front of Lee Yeram, his face filled with arrogance. He threatened her for what she had done and warned that if she didn't comply, he would reveal what happened in the car that night to her fiancé. Lee Yeram couldn't take it anymore. She went back to No and demanded an explanation. But this time, No longer pretended to be sympathetic. His face was cold, filled with contempt. He didn't need to fake it anymore. "This isn't anything new," he smirked. "Did you really think you could serve in the military without facing things like this?" Lee Yeram froze. Those words hit her like a slap. She had believed someone would help her, but it was all a lie. No never intended to protect her. He only wanted to cover things up, to protect himself. But Yeram refused to let this go. She couldn't let Jang and No get away with it. She decided she would fight to the very end. She retrieved the dashcam footage from her car. The images captured on it were undeniable proof of what Jang had done to her. She took the evidence to the military police department. This time, she believed the truth would come to light. Jang would be punished, justice would be served. But she was wrong. The military police accepted her complaint but took no action against Jang. No arrest warrant, no suspension from duty, nothing. Instead, they summoned her for questioning, again and again. Every interrogation forced her to relive the nightmare. She was forced to recount every horrifying detail, every moment she wished she could erase. This ordeal took a toll on her mental and physical health, causing her to deteriorate significantly. She demanded that the military police summon Jang, but it took half a month before they finally called him in, and it was just a perfunctory questioning. They asked him a few basic questions, showed no seriousness, and then let him go. No charges were filed, no disciplinary action was taken. Finally, after weeks of waiting, the investigation results were announced, and it broke her completely. Sergeant Jang denied everything. He gave a single excuse: "I was drunk. I don't remember anything." And shockingly, the military police accepted this defense. There is not enough evidence to conclude that Jang committed any wrongdoing. That was their final ruling. Jang faced no punishment. He was merely transferred to another unit, a meaningless slap on the wrist that had zero impact on his life. The South Korean Air Force didn't want this case to tarnish its reputation, so they made a firm decision to bury everything. When all her cries for help led nowhere, when every door was slammed shut in her face, Lee Yaram began losing faith in the military. She couldn't endure it any longer. She requested a 2-month medical leave to return home and rest. But she never expected that this decision would only make Jang bolder. He kept calling her, harassing her non-stop. Meanwhile, the military police department also set people to pressure her into dropping the complaint, or more accurately, to threaten her. Pretend like nothing happened. You still have a future ahead of you. Don't ruin yourself. She refused, but then they escalated their threats. They would tell her family everything. This felt like a punch to her soul. She wasn't afraid for herself. She was afraid for her loved ones. She didn't want them to suffer alongside her. And so, she was forced to endure this alone. On May 18th, when her medical leave ended, Lee Yaram returned to the base. However, she was informed that she had been transferred to the 15th Fighter Wing. The decision was made without any explanation. No one asked for her opinion, and no one warned her in advance. Lee Yaram accepted the change in work environment, hoping that the new place could bring her some peace. But things didn't go as she expected. News of her assault had spread throughout the Air Force. Every time she walked past her colleagues, she could feel their judgmental stares, hear their whispers, and the cruel words filled with contempt. When everything exceeded her limit of endurance, Lee Yaram could no longer hold on. She chose to end it all. But she did not leave in silence. She left behind clear evidence of the crimes committed against her. A video, a suicide note, a detailed file documenting everything that had happened to her. It was all carefully prepared. When news of Yaram's death spread, the South Korean military immediately tried to suppress information. The Ministry of National Defense dismissed her death as a small, isolated incident. A brief statement was posted on the official website of the South Korean Air Force. No apology. No real investigation took place. Her family, however, could not accept this injustice. Her father refused to let his daughter be forgotten. In the depths of his grief, he submitted a petition to the Blue House demanding justice for his daughter. This petition was not just a plea for help. It was an indictment. He accused those involved in his daughter's death and demanded that the truth be brought to light before the public. Immediately, the case sent shockwaves throughout South Korea. No one could believe that such brutality existed within a prestigious military unit like the South Korean Air Force. Within 2 days, nearly 400,000 people signed the petition. demanding action against those responsible. Under immense public pressure, the South Korean Ministry of National Defense had no choice but to act. Within 2 days, Sergeant Jang was urgently arrested. He had nowhere left to run. During the investigation, Jang not only confessed to all accusations but also revealed that he had assaulted another female soldier before. The pressure continued to mount. Mass protests erupted across the country, demanding severe punishment. The media continuously exposed loopholes in the military system. In the end, Sergeant John was sentenced to 9 years in prison, a harsher sentence than previous cases, but still not enough to appease public outrage. But there was still one major issue: those who covered up the case. The powerful figures who ignored the crime, who silenced Yeram, and they faced no punishment. Yeram's father understood this. He decided to take things further. He hired a lawyer to sue those involved for deliberately concealing the truth. They could not escape. They had to be held accountable. During the investigation, the lawyer uncovered a horrifying truth. Lee Yeram was not only attacked by Jang, several other senior officers were also involved. The pressure on the South Korean military leadership became unbearable. Someone had to take responsibility. The Chief of Staff of the South Korean Air Force, General Lee Yong, was forced to resign. He had known everything, but did nothing. The Minister of National Defense was also forced to issue a public apology and take accountability before the public. For the first time in history, a sexual assault case in the military forced high-ranking officials to face responsibility. The case was so serious that even former South Korean President Moon Jae-in had to publicly address it. In his speech, he emphasized the importance of ensuring safety and protecting the rights of those serving in the military. Lee Yeram sacrificed her life to expose this brutal reality. She did not die in vain. But did this truly expose all the dark corners of the military? Or was it merely a small glimpse into an even greater mystery? This is the end of the video. If you found this story compelling, please like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with more gripping cases. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.